Hello guys, TKN here with your October JRPG news roundup. We'll be kicking off with our Falcom section as always, starting with the merchandise. So Falcom had a 40th anniversary tapestry up for sale around 3 months prior on their official site. It's an original art piece in celebration of the milestone and ran out of stock fairly quickly. Due to popular demand, the tapestry has now been restocked, so you can purchase one yourself if interested. Now moving on to a little bit of Kuro no Kiseki merchandise for now, so skip forward to this timestamp if you'd rather not see it. On October the 21st, a B3 sized horizontal calendar for 2022 was announced, featuring an original art piece by Katsumi Anami as the cover art. Last year's calendar utilised some unique Hajimari no Kiseki art split between a boys and girls calendar, and now they've taken the newest Trails game and made that the centrepiece of the latest version. You can pre-order this via the Falcom website. Its release is in December of this year. On top of that, a strategy guide for Kuro no Kiseki was announced, which is due for release on the 20th of November, and will also come with a costume DLC for Judith, one of the main characters of this new group. This once again is available for pre-order on the Falcom website. A little bit closer to home now, and Pinbox takes the spotlight this time around. They announced a new set of East 9 pins for all of the Monstroms, with an open pre-order window up till the 2nd of November. In addition, there were also some East t-shirts announced with the same pre-order deadline. As for your choice of designs, your options are art directly from East Origin featuring the twin goddesses, or this one showing off the East logo, of which I have pre-ordered one myself. I feel confident in recommending these as always. The 40th anniversary shirts they created were of a great quality, better even than the one I got from NIS America, and I imagine these will be as well. Now on to the games themselves, and last month we saw a blatant case of plagiarism involving Final Fantasy XIV Shadowbringers. Now it seems like Trails of Cold Steel has got the same treatment. A mobile game, of course it is, called Dragon and Sword, created by indie developer Reikelin, has quite literally taken the base art of Cold Steel characters and recoloured them for their own ends. And it's not just Trails, Langrisser and the Fate series got a similar deal in this. But hey, they may have ripped off designs, but what about the game? Is that any good? Well, I had a look so you don't have to, and it took me about 15 seconds to deduce that this is your typical cash grab gacha merry-go-round. On top of having the notable accolades of overheating phones, poor balance, an archaic user interface and Google translated text, the game is based around shards. You don't get the characters on your roll of the dice, you simply get a piece of them, and naturally they are a pain in the arse to accumulate, especially if you want the rarer heroes. But of course, this can all be circumvented if you just dive into your wallet and feed in your hard-earned dosh. A scummy act goes hand in hand with a scummy game. What a surprise. No news on whether Falcom will take any action here, but stay away. Moving on to something far more deserving of credit, the Zero Field team continue to make excellent progress on the Kuro no Kiseki spreadsheet, just finishing up Chapter 3 and even finishing the text capture phase for Chapter 4 on the 29th, which is insane speed considering only the prologue was done last month. A massive thank you to them as always for their hard work in bringing Kuro to players who can't wait for the localization, myself included. On to the Geo front now, and even with the official localizations of Zero and Azure in the works for 2022 and 2023, the V Sector have now finished their translation patch for Ys vs Sora no Kiseki, which released on October the 16th for the likes of PSP and the Vita. If you want to play on PC though, you'll need some form of emulator. A full article was released on their website detailing many of the challenges faced and features within, as well as noting the future release of a guide to install the patch, which is now available to view. For people who are not aware of what Ys vs Sora no Kiseki is, it's a crossover of the flagship Falcom games laced with an original story. So you're seeing the likes of Ado and Dogi teaming up with Estelle and Joshua as an example. As for the gameplay, if you've played something like Power Stone back on the Dreamcast, it's pretty much the same deal. It's an arena-based fighter with a top-down view which utilises the same engine as in Ys 7. If you've got the means, it might be worth picking up a copy and trying it yourself. Massive thank you to the V Sector for their 22-month endeavour. To finish up our Falcom roundup, we move to an interview with Falcom President Toshihiro Kondo conducted by Weibo.com and translated by our man himself, Hansuke. I've linked the full interview in the description, but for the sake of this video, I'm just going to mention the highlights that caught my interest. This will mostly be mentions of Kuro no Kiseki and a bit of Ys at the end, so I'll put a timestamp to skip once again if you'd rather not hear it. Of note is that apparently come the end of the Calvard arc we'll be exploring 2 more regions, so where that will take us is anyone's guess. But I personally hope for a visit to Arteria in a future game. I think many fans were estimating 2 more arcs of the Calvard based on previous milestones given by Kondo in regards to the completion of the series as a whole, so this probably doesn't come as too much of a surprise. Also, it seems that the Arkwright Solutions office only took the spotlight for one game, as their story is now complete. Apparently, the future Calvard games will involve the rest of the continent. And last of all, as part of another interview conducted by GNN.Gamer, there was mention of the E-Series, and Hansuke sorted us out here too. Kondo was asked about the 35th anniversary of Ys and whether there was some big news in the pipeline in celebration of it. In his normal cryptic tone, the Falcom president said that he can't confirm whether a new title will release, but that the team are currently working hard. We already know that an Ys game has been in development for a while now in-house, and considering the series anniversary, I'd be very surprised if we don't get one this year. Whether that's Ys 10 or an Ys 5 remake remains to be seen, but chances are we'll know come this year's shareholder meeting. And now we'll move on to our general JRPG news, starting off with the Yakuza series and its reported worldwide sales. It's doing pretty good, according to a report from Sega running up to a fiscal close of March 2021, as the series up till that point had sold 17 million products worldwide, and that doesn't include the sales from last month's release in Lost Judgment, which surely would add to that figure. With popularity soaring and a strongly positive reception for the last mainline game in Yakuza Like a Dragon, it's no surprise that Ryuga Gotoku Studios are now working on a sequel to that particular entry. But they'll have to push on without the experience of Toshihiro Nagoshi and Daisuke Sato, who have since left the developer and Sega as a whole, according to a report from October the 8th. Masayoshi Yokohama has taken over as executive producer and director and will now work along with 6 other veterans of the series to push through this anticipated sequel. Now we move on to Atlus, in particular Persona and Shin Megami Tensei, of which there are a few things to mention, not surprising considering the imminent release of SMT 5. So we'll start there. A new trailer was released for the game on the 27th of October, showcasing some more of those SMT staples, namely a cryptic plot, a desolate world, and demons. Lots of demons. The game is due out on the 11th of November, which coincidentally is my birthday, so that's a pretty good present. On top of that, there was mention of Day 1 DLC for the game back on October the 20th, and it looks like they're locking demons behind it along with a few missions, one of which includes a cameo appearance from the True Demon, which is the protagonist from Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne, for those who are unaware. In total, it comes to around $30 worth of content that isn't even included in the collector's edition. I'm not too supportive of that personally, but even without that, it's shaping up to be a JRPG of the Year contender. And it's pretty clear that fans love their Shin Megami Tensei, and Persona for that matter. As part of the aforementioned integrated report from Sega, the sales figures for Persona and Shin Megami Tensei were also given up till March 2021. Persona, throughout its 25-year history, had sold 15 million units in total, with the current fiscal year's results buoyed by Persona 5 Strikers and the Steam release of Persona 4 Golden, which in of itself had sold 900,000 copies before the cutoff point of March 2021. SMT, on the other hand, has indeed sold more, albeit with a longer track record, totaling 17.7 million copies worldwide over a 34-year lifespan. This year's rise was mostly supported by the release of the SMT3 Nocturne remaster, which sold 250,000 copies in Asia and Japan. The report itself didn't even include the English sales of Nocturne, as that didn't release till May of this year when it was distributed worldwide. Finally, we end our section on Atlus with the departure of Shoji Meguro, who announced that he had left the Atlus sound scene to pursue his dream of indie game development in a video on the 27th of October. Some will know him as the sound director of the Persona series, who has worked with the company since 1995, with his most recent work stemming from P5 Strikers. For the past 5 years, he has been developing games independently under the pseudonym Megarock, but now with the support of Kodansha Game Creators Lab, he has announced that he is working on a new indie game which apparently is a near-future science fiction ARPG shooter, and it will be announced in November of 2021. Thankfully though, as is common for long-serving musicians of game developers, Meguro will continue to work with Atlus on future titles as a freelancer. Now on to a few tidbits concerning merchandise that caught my eye, and we're starting with Rune Factory 5, which is due out on the 25th of March 2022 for Europe, and the 22nd for North America on Switch. It was announced in early October that the game is due a limited edition which will include a steelbook case, a collector's box, the game, an art book, a music CD, and some DLC costumes. And those who pre-order from Europe and Australia will get themselves a woolly bag tag as well. Many fans of the likes of Harvest Moon will be well aware of this spin-off game that draws influence from its standard farming simulator foundation, so this is something extra that they might want to add to their collection. Our next port of call is the Tales of series, and as part of a Kotobukiya premium event centered around Tales of Arise, it appears that a prototype 1/7 scale figure of Rinwell has been showcased for the first time. No release date has been given for this as of yet, but there is also a scale figure of Alfin on the way as well. Considering I've just started my JRPG figure collection, these seem like strong contenders to be added to it. On top of that, on November the 20th, there will be a Tales of Arise live orchestra performance which starts at 3 AM Japanese Standard Time. In other words, they're staying up late to give a performance to the West. If you're interested, you can find a link in the description to purchase a ticket to watch it digitally. They're about 3,500 yen each. Now we move on to some releases that have happened this month. First of all, the dungeon crawler Labyrinth of Touhou, Gensokyo and the Heaven-Piercing Great Tree, that is a mouthful, was given an English release on Steam on the 13th of October. I'm personally not too big on dungeon crawlers, but here's something to check out if you're interested. Moving on to Neptunia and Senran Kagura now, and the reason being is because they have a crossover game which released on PlayStation 4 very recently. It's called Neptunia x Senran Kagura Ninja Wars, and it got a showcase of its opening movie plus a combat reel just before its release. As you would expect of a crossover, you're seeing the appearances of series staples like Neptune, Noir and Blanc from Neptunia, and Asuka from Senran Kagura. The plot sounds simple. The two sets of protags are training in ninja schools and are out to stop a machine army once the situation escalates, but I imagine most of the focus will be on the characters themselves and the fan service that is synonymous with both of them. If I'm honest though, based on the gameplay I've seen, it actually looks pretty fun from an action RPG standpoint, and it looks like one of those titles that you can just play for mindless fun, rather than delving into deep narrative themes as you'd often get from this genre. One thing I will say is that it had one hell of a good looking limited edition, but unfortunately I couldn't really justify buying it as I'm not a die-hard fan of either series. And finally, we will end our release section with a fan translation that released on October the 8th. So I imagine many who are interested already know about this already. Suikoden Woven Web of the Centuries, the 14th title in this long-running series, originally released on PSP in 2012 for Japan only. However, thanks to a German translation group known as Twisted Phoenix Game Translation along with a team of independent Japanese to English translators, a patch is now available to play the game in English. Just like with Ys via Sora no Kiseki though, you'll need either a PSP or an emulator in order to play it. As for the game itself, it takes place outside the continuity of the mainline games, with a group of friends sent back in time 100 years. In typical fashion, it becomes their destiny to smite an evil that appears every century, enlisting the help of fabled heroes in order to do so. In typical Suikoden fashion, the wide array of characters takes precedence here, and if you enjoyed the mainline games, there's a good chance you'll enjoy this too. A link to the site with the patch is in the description. Now on to some upcoming releases, and I can't help it, but I'm really looking forward to this expansion, so I'm going to talk about it despite not being a JRPG in the strictest sense. We're starting with Final Fantasy, and it's going to be Endwalker that we talk about first. As is customary for new Final Fantasy XIV expansions, a media tour was conducted at the end of September, and come mid-October the various outlets were able to give their thoughts on their early access sample. The event, held virtually this time due to the pandemic, allowed players to try out the new jobs like Reaper and Sage, and also try out the reworked jobs too. I know for a fact that my main job, Monk, got hit with a hammer. In addition, the much referred to Sharlayan could finally be visited for the first time, along with an early Endwalker dungeon. And it seems that the latest expansion, releasing on November the 23rd, is likely to be the most successful expansion yet if recent reports concerning the player base are to be believed. Since 2017, registered accounts have more than doubled from 10 million during Stormblood to 24 million as of now. These impressive figures have understandably made Final Fantasy XIV the most profitable Final Fantasy game yet, according to PC Gamer. If you want a full rundown of the media tour, I've linked that in the description. Now moving away from 14, there is another release on the cards. As part of the Final Fantasy Remaster series, Final Fantasy V is due out on the 10th of November, and pre-orders are now open on Steam if you want to try out an old classic. Finally, we end the Final Fantasy section with some merchandise that piqued my interest. Considering the rich soundtracks that the series has boasted in the past, it's no surprise that Square wanted to commemorate that in some way. And on the 22nd of October they did just that, putting up pre-orders for 4 vinyl sets known as Heroes and Villains on the Square Enix store, and these will release on the 28th of March 2022. The cover artwork is based off of the Dissidia series, and the vinyls include memorable tracks like One Winged Angel and a myriad of main themes from various titles in the mainline series. Those who order will also get an MP3 download code if they wish to simply keep the set in pristine condition. And then very recently, on the 29th of October, they also showed off the second statue from the Masterline series, a 1/6 scale figure from Final Fantasy VI, along with a YouTube video to accompany and show it off. At the moment there are no pre-orders up, but future announcements concerning its release are due soon. Now we move on to Monark, which according to a report from the 21st of October has sold 50,000 copies in Japan, split between PlayStation 4 and Switch in both physical and digital mediums since its release on the 14th of October. For reference, the game sold about 10,000 copies in its first 3 days according to Famitsu, which placed it at 6th in that week's listings. As for a Western release, we knew that NIS America were taking up the mantle to do so, but we now have an actual release date too, as it's coming to North America on February the 22nd and Europe on the 25th for the likes of PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Switch and PC. Based on the trailers I've seen, I am indeed looking forward to this one, so here's hoping it can measure up. Next on the list, we move to a well-received action RPG that originally released back in 2019. Developed by Gemdrops and published by Furyu, Crystar is now coming to Switch in spring 2022 via NIS America once again. The Japanese release is coming slightly earlier on February the 24th, 2022. For those who aren't too clued up, and to be honest neither was I as I haven't played it either, it's a plot based around a girl named Rei making a deal with two demons in purgatory in order to revive her younger sister. And apparently there's something about crying? Like I say, it slipped off my radar back in 2019, but I might give this one a whirl if I get a chance, especially considering it's already on PC. Moving to a small tidbit on a game releasing on November the 9th now, Blue Reflection's Second Light, the newest title from one of my recent favourite developers in Gust, now has a demo available on the likes of PlayStation 4 and Switch, which will allow players to try out the combat, some crafting, exploration and experience the prologue. Those who do complete the demo offerings will be given some bonus accessories should they upgrade to the full game on its release. I've said before that this is a title that I am personally looking forward to, and considering I've also watched the Blue Reflection Rei anime adaptation, I'm wondering if this game is going to have some sort of connection with that along with its predecessor title. And finally, what I consider to be the biggest news for October is that the Star Ocean series is coming off a 5-year hiatus. After the middling reception of Star Ocean Integrity and Faithlessness, I did fear for the future of this series, but it appears that Tri-Ace have not let that deter them, as a new game known as Star Ocean The Divine Force was announced on the State of Play livestream on the 27th of October. This game will be coming to PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Xbox Series, Xbox One and PC in 2022, though we don't have an official date as of yet. Naturally, there was a promotional video made available to get a brief glimpse of what the game is going to offer as well, and it seems that exploration is taking a new dimension in this game, as it appears you can fly around and dive down on enemies to your heart's content. The combat also looks to be the fastest iteration yet, allowing for surprise attacks and what seems to be fluid transition from exploration to combat a la Xenoblade Chronicles. As for the story, it's based around this metal-looking geezer named Raymond who is the captain of a merchant vessel called Idas, and a princess called Letitia, future sovereign of an underdeveloped nation. Of course, they're not the only characters, more were introduced as well, but I'm personally just happy there's a new Star Ocean game on the way. For all of its flaws, I actually enjoyed Star Ocean 4. Shocker, I know. And despite it being the only game in the series I've tried out, I'm more than willing to give this a try when it releases. No doubt, more news will be available on it soon. And that is it guys, your October JRPG news roundup is complete. If you liked it, please leave the video a thumbs up to help out the channel, and I'll see you next month.